There are headlines screaming about panic and disarray in the Donald Trump campaign machine. Media lemmings driving the narrative about bouts being planned for Bernie Sanders against Hillary Clinton. And with all this nonsense, is anything truly changing with regard to the person America wants in the White House? This is where led to believe it is not too late for a third party, someone we haven't seen or considered yet, to mount an effective campaign and destroy all those well-laid plans. We've got someone who believes he can do just that, though it may be too little too late. Catholics around the world are once again dealing with the Pope, who seems serious about changing the church forever. But his latest pronouncements are still leaving plenty of followers to want more change, as they keep asking where this church is actually heading. We're heading toward cars that fix themselves and needing to embrace the stench of our self-created politics. Your charge once again with questioning everything. I'm Ed Berliner. This is The Hardline for Friday, April 8th, 2016.
Both Democrats and Republicans have a lot to win or lose when it comes to the primary on April 19th. So I think this may be the most consequential we've seen in New York. The big question for Republicans going forward is, can John Kasich or Ted Cruz sell their message in the Northeast? Neither of them has shown that they can do that yet. Neither of them has shown that they can really play in the Northeast. And unless they could do that, Donald Trump is probably going to come out ahead.
It would appear as if Donald Trump is doing exactly as his opponents had feared, getting serious about becoming president, spending a lot less on social media, meeting with the Republican hierarchy and learning how it needs to be done in order to win, and shockingly, hiring someone to actually be in charge of his convention proceedings instead of letting mouthpieces and media acolytes only do his dirty work. So as we hear some corners hinting Trump is on his heels, the simple question has to be, what are those critics and experts seeing that others simply refuse to admit exists? Shoot to thrill. Let's get down to work. He is editor of the growing website that promotes being written by young conservatives for young conservatives, Red Alert Politics, Ron Meyer, joined by the veteran GOP strategist and senior project manager at Hathaway Strategies, Pete Seat. Gentlemen, we got a lot of strategies going on here, so that's what we're going to talk about right now. And Pete, I'm going to begin with you. I've got two news stories sitting in front of me right here. Colorado loss, because Ted Cruz swept a third straight congressional district convention on Thursday night in Colorado. Colorado loss reveals chaotic, overwhelmed Trump campaign. Here's another. New hire signals a reboot in the Donald Trump campaign. Wait a minute, Pete. I look at the numbers here, and Donald Trump is the only one who has a real shot at that straight line to getting enough delegates to be the Republican nominee. What are we missing here?
Well, he's not going to Colorado this weekend as originally planned. He got walloped in North Dakota this past weekend when Ted Cruz swept the delegate process there because they have been courting delegates for a year. And what you're seeing, all that, plus the escalation of Paul Manafort's role in the campaign, is the fact that Donald Trump and his campaign didn't understand how this process works. He thought it was enough. He has said this himself, that his force of personality and his ability to control mass communications and mass media would be enough to win the nomination. But that's not how it works. It's a delegate by delegate race, and they may be finding that out far too late.
Hey, Ron, didn't understand how it works. Pete has some really good words there, because that's what a lot of people have talked about right now. And if we take that into account, and the Paul Manafort hiring right now to get ready for the convention, there are those saying that despite everything I've just said, all these wonderful flowers about Donald Trump, that if he doesn't get the nomination on that very first vote, first time out of the box, then people are going to start leaving him in droves, and he will not win the nomination. What do you think?
Well, it's not leaving in droves. Those people aren't coming supporting Trump. That's the issue, is that Donald Trump from the beginning, it's like not knowing the difference between, thinking that the popular vote decides the presidential election in November, not the Electoral College. It's the delegates that vote at these conventions. And yes, they are bound for the first ballot, in some instances for the first two ballots, by these state GOP parties. But if you don't understand that these delegates are actually the ones that vote, that make the decisions, delegates, by the way, that aren't picked by the RNC, they're elected by people. They're elected by local Republican parties. And so when Trump says, oh, it's not democratic, these people are elected. They're being elected right now. Ted Cruz from the beginning has developed slates to get his people nominated and elected as delegates to go to the convention. Donald Trump had no idea this was coming. And right now, I mean, hiring Paul Manafort's a great step in the right direction for him. But this is something he needed to do from day one. And Ted Cruz was doing it from day one. And so I do believe that there would be, I think he'd have a hard time winning a second ballot. And certainly on a third ballot, he'd have no shot.
Pete, do you believe that there are delegates right now? And again, this is all just, here's a couple of guys sitting here and we're guessing right now, the experts and the strategists. But would you guess that right now there are delegates that are set for Donald Trump by the time they get to Cleveland, that if indeed it goes to a second ballot, after all we've seen, all the problems he's had in the last couple of weeks and certainly the last couple of months, that they would be ready to jump ship and go with somebody else on a second vote?
Oh, I have no doubt in the world that that's the case. You know, these delegates, like it was said, are bound on that first ballot in most cases to the vote in their congressional district or the vote in their state. But after that, all bets are off. You know, the types of people who are delegates, this is an expensive enterprise. You're talking about $3,000 to $5,000 to go to Cleveland and be a delegate. Not everyone can afford to do that. So it changes the dynamics of who's actually on that floor. And some people are going to, quote unquote, vote for Donald Trump because they have to. But the second they have the chance not to, they're going to take that opportunity.
Pete, have you talked to anybody, or do you by any chance know anybody who might be in that little group right there who now regrets it? People who have actually said, boy, I'll tell you, I wish I didn't have to go for Trump right now.
Oh, I know folks who are relishing the opportunity for a second ballot to come and to make their voices loud and clear.
Delegates now? Delegates, you're saying?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, now, Ron, let's go to you on this one, because that's interesting. We really haven't focused on that, and neither has anybody else, because these are delegates that are promised right now. And I imagine that you, too, look, you follow politics 24/7, 365. You eat this alive, knowing full well that after what's happened here, no matter the fact he leads right now, there are delegates who would like to say, boy, I got to get out of here right now. This is the wrong guy. I know all three of us are going to get hammered for that, Ron. I guarantee, even for saying that out loud, but we got to believe that that's the case.
Well, you have to remember that you're not elected as a Trump supporter. So I'm going to go to the 10th District Republican Convention in Virginia here in the next couple weeks, and we vote for 3 delegates. Now, the most likely what's going to happen is that either Cruz supporters or Trump supporters are going to be elected. But let's say this. Let's say 3 Ted Cruz delegates out of 3 possible get nominated and elected to be delegates. That means that Virginia, so the 10th District went for Senator Rubio. And so the 10th district on the first ballot would have to, I think, give 2 delegates to Rubio, maybe 1 vote to Trump. And so that's how they're bound to vote by the GOP state rules. But then after that, they vote for how they want to. They're elected delegates. And so they're all going to, let's say, a hypothetical world, it's all Cruz people. They'd vote for, all 3 of them would vote for Ted Cruz. And that's how it happens state to state to state. These people, and oftentimes are running either on slates or saying that they publicly support a candidate. And so at these conventions, that's what I'm saying. It's almost like there's 2 elections. You have the first election that's done more of a popular vote style to decide, how the first ballot's going to be allocated. Then you have these conventions, and these conventions matter. And it's hilarious. I'm seeing Republicans for the first time being like, wow, I have a Washington Post reporter at my local convention. That's never happened before. These local conventions and local party politics are starting to matter. And frankly, I think it's a good thing for our party that we have people active and having to engage in this sort of process that's been happening for years and years, and that it matters.
We got to talk about electability here, too, because, Pete, the Associated Press GFK poll that came out, I think, is eye-opening, and it has to be, no matter whom you love and whom you hate. Donald Trump with a 69% unfavorable rating. This is national now. But Ted Cruz is 59%. Hillary Clinton is 55%. Pete, I heard somebody say this the other day, and I've been saying this for 6 months. Should we just go ahead, hold our nose right now, put a clothespin on it, and say that in our generation right now, we have never seen a more stench-filled election where people just don't want to vote for anybody. They can't stand anybody.
Yeah, but this is the process that we've essentially built, right, at the ballot box by allowing Donald Trump to accumulate the delegates that he has so far.
But it's not just Donald Trump, Pete. I want to point out, Pete, this is not just Donald Trump, because the numbers tell you they don't like Donald Trump, they don't like Ted Cruz, they don't like Hillary Clinton, they don't like anybody.
Yeah, and I was getting there. Same with Hillary Clinton, same with Ted Cruz. We have built this, and now we're kind of looking at it and saying, okay, what have we done? We actually don't trust these people. We don't like these people. And yet it looks like we're willing to put them in the Oval Office. It makes little sense. I've written before that there's an obsession in this culture with the villain. We love the villains, whether they're in movies or on reality TV, and I saw that in the support behind these individuals. I mean, look at Ted Cruz. He has made his career out of having people dislike him in Washington, D.C., from Mitch McConnell on down.
And now he says he's not going to apologize to Mitch McConnell either. He said that recently. I'm not going to apologize to Mitch. No way, no how. That's the way it is. He's not backing up.
No, because he's not going to show weakness. He's not going to apologize. And frankly, he's taking a cue from Donald Trump, who told Anderson Cooper last week or the week before he doesn't remember the last time he apologized to someone.
Come on, politicians don't apologize. We all know that. Ron, I got 60 seconds left. Many people look at the numbers. They say, as of this week, John Kasich is the only Republican who consistently beats Hillary Clinton head-to-head. He wins by a 6-point average margin. So shouldn't we be looking at those people who say, get out John Kasich? Why? This is a guy who is he not doing the right thing for him, maybe for the party to stick in until Cleveland?
Under that argument, then, we should nominate Marco Rubio from the floor of the convention, too. He actually still has more delegates than John Kasich. Kasich has no mathematical way to get to the number you need to win.
Well, no, there's no mathematical way to get there. You're exactly right, Ron, but we're talking about that contested convention. Hang on, Pete. We're talking about the contested convention. Yes, right?
That's exactly right. And that's what I'm saying. Why not somebody like Marco Rubio, who is polling almost just as well as John Kasich? But the problem is with John Kasich, he's hugely unknown by the American people. And he, by the way, has had some really major gaffes this campaign that are really embarrassing. Gaffes about women, gaffes about groups of voters that we need to win. Once actually somebody ran a campaign against John Kasich and actually talked about his record, talked about some of these things he said, his popularity would go down. No one knows who John Kasich is. They know who someone like a Marco Rubio is or someone like our Mitt Romney is. And those are people that would most likely be your third choices. John Kasich, I think, frankly, is wasting our time and his time by staying in.
Pete, you get 5 seconds. Anybody else except Kasich from the floor?
Well, I think Rubio, Paul Ryan, any of the above. Anything can happen.
Okay, we got to start narrowing this down, which we will in future talks. Pete Seat, Ron Meyer. Gentlemen, thanks for getting us started. The one place where we as individuals are so susceptible to attack and we never even consider it as an issue. Next on The Hardline.